smooth, she a diamond, she a diamond, she a diamond, she a diamond. She ain't worried about a thing. Trust a nigga, girl, that's the plan. Cause with him, she could do anything. Yeah, that's diamond, yeah, that's diamond.
Today I want to talk about the controversy surrounding Jackie Hill Perry, the backlash she's received online, and what I think it reveals about our culture. This isn't a video attacking LGBT people. This isn't a video denying the discrimination, suffering, rejection, and mistreatment that many LGBT and extra people have faced throughout history. That history is real. Those experiences matter. This is a video about something different. It's about what happens when someone shares a deeply personal testimony and people decide that testimony should not exist. It's about whether we still believe people have the right to tell their own stories. It's about whether disagreement has been replaced by public punishment. Hi, my name is Diamond Rhodes. I make videos on here, Flowers for Real, Diamond-in-the-Rough TV, and I have been someone who has, benefited from Jackie Hill Perry's ministry for probably, I don't know, since like 2012 or 2010, something like that. Section 1. What actually happened? So Jackie Hill Perry is a speaker, author, poet. She also makes music, hip-hop music. She's a Christian rapper. She's a mom, she's a wife, yeah, all those things. I found her during the PC4N movement, Pastor of Christ movement, and she was doing poetry. I heard a lot of different people, and I remember there was one video of her where she was doing My Life as a Stud, and from there I followed her career. So what I feel like she talks about, what her message is that coming to Jesus doesn't make you straight, it just makes you closer to him. It makes you a child of God. That is about it. She believes in that people are made in the image of him, and that everybody, all humans, are image bearers. And so, yeah. She believes that her life has changed from, accepting Jesus Christ into her life as her savior, and that even though her affections didn't change immediately, and she still has temptations, and she still deals with that, in whatever way those that might be. She is married to her husband, who she does love. She does have kids, and she is happy with her life. That's what I believe from engaging with her content over the time. I see a lot of things coming that say that she looks unhappy. I don't see that. I ain't never seen that. So I saw this whole thing pop up because there was a post on Threads. I don't have Threads, but I saw reactions to that, and I looked it up. And so somebody had said Happy Pride Month to her, and apparently that turned into a whole backlash. I don't like to read a bunch of negative posts, so I didn't go look up the threads and see what everybody was saying to her. But I do know that, yeah, it obviously was bad. Somebody said there was like 57,000 posts, and I'm like, that's crazy. That's a crazy amount. Just from one person saying Happy Pride Month, which, was that supposed to be mean or whatever? Apparently the girl who did it said that she wasn't trying to basically cause backlash. But I have to side-eye that, because what were you trying to do? What would be the reason for that? You thought it was funny, and you said it, and now what? The thing that stood out to me wasn't that people disagree with her. People disagree every day. What stood out was the intensity, the anger, the ridicule, the insistence that her story should not be told. Section 2. Disagreement versus dehumanization. Criticism is normal. Disagreement is normal. You're not supposed to agree with everybody. That's crazy. That would mean that they're you. You don't even agree with yourself all the time. Debate is normal. Debate. We can talk about things. We can disagree. We can argue even. It doesn't have to come to toxic, dehumanizing language. But there comes a point where criticism turns into something else. Name-calling, mockery, humiliation, character assassination, treating someone as evil simply because they have a different interpretation of their own life. At what point does disagreement become bullying? At what point do we stop challenging ideas and start attacking people? I feel like saying that she looks unhappy behind her eyes is crazy to me. Saying that her marriage is a lavender marriage is pretty strange. Inferring things that only people in her actual life would know about her relationship status or whatever she does in her marriage, any of that, that's crazy. Section 3, are we allowing people to change? One question I keep coming back to is this: do we actually believe people can change? Because if someone says, this was my experience, this is what I believe happened in my life, this is where I am now, shouldn't they have a right to tell that story? Even if we disagree with it, even if we think they're wrong. If personal testimony only matters when it supports our worldview, then maybe we don't actually believe in personal autonomy at all. Maybe when she speaks about her life and her experience, somehow that stirs things in people where they feel like she is also speaking to them and telling them what they should do. From watching pretty much, I can say the one thing I don't engage with is her Instagram as much anymore, because I don't be on Instagram like that. Instagram is not good for my mental health, so I don't be on there. But as far as her message goes, her podcasts, sermons that she puts up, all that kind of stuff, I be up in there. And like, I don't feel like she condemns you. I don't feel like she tells you what you should do. I don't feel like the stuff she says is toxic. I can understand from a person who is maybe struggling with their sexuality and, you know, is going to church or has been kicked out of the church or is not welcome in church, could feel a way about what she's saying, that what she did was accept God and then immediately cut off her relationship, and now she's married, and you feel like, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm talking to adults here. Adults, it is your life. You only get one of them, and you should do what you feel like is the right thing for you to do. You should have discernment and knowing, and if you believe, for the Christians here, that you have the Holy Spirit, he should be leading to what you should do. You shouldn't be just going off of what you hear online from somebody you don't know. Section 4. When movements become what they once fought against. Every movement faces the same danger. Not because the movement is evil, not because everyone involved behaves this way, but because human nature doesn't change. Every group eventually faces the temptation to believe we are right, we are the good people, and therefore people who disagree deserve punishment. That's where things become dangerous, because once disagreement becomes a moral crime, the conversation becomes impossible. And when I look at some of the reactions to Jackie Hill Perry, that's what concerns me. Not disagreement, not criticism, the idea that her testimony should not be allowed to exist, that it is inherently evil or that is toxic, what she says she experienced in her life, because it may make somebody feel a kind of way in their own life. The idea that she should be mocked, dragged, and publicly humiliated because she sees her life differently than someone else would. Section 5, the right to tell your own story. Who owns a personal testimony? Who does it belong to? Who are you allowed to share it with? If Jackie Hill Perry says, this is what happened to me, this is how I understand my life, this is what I believe God did, why do strangers get to tell her her experience isn't real? You don't have to agree. You don't have to believe in deliverance. You don't have to follow the same path. But shouldn't people have ownership over their own stories? Should she be allowed to say what has happened in her life and what she did or what she felt like God told her? And you can either agree with it or not, but she's allowed to say those things. The same way you're allowed to say what happened to you when you were 5 years old, or what happened to you yesterday at work. You're allowed to tell those stories, and people shouldn't judge you because you told that story. What? From just somebody simply telling their story, it turns into this whole thing of her impact on the culture. But shouldn't people have ownership over their own stories? Because real freedom means allowing people to make choices we wouldn't make ourselves. Section 6, the lived experience paradox. This is where the conversation gets really interesting. For years we've heard, listen to people's lived experiences. Don't tell people who they are. Nobody knows their own story better than they do. And I agree with much of that. I agree with all of that, really. People should be able to describe their own experiences. People should be able to explain what they believe happened in their lives. But what happens when that experience goes against the accepted narrative? Suddenly people start saying, no, that's not what happened. No, that's not your real experience. No, I don't believe you. No, I can tell by the way you dress that hasn't happened. No, I can tell by looking in your eyes that you're repressed and that you hate yourself and that you hate your life every day. You're confused. You're brainwashed. You're lying. You have been influenced by evangelical Christians, and because of that, they made you anti-black, and now you hate yourself. And I have to ask, how can we claim to respect lived experience if we only respect the experiences that support our worldview? If Jackie Hill Perry says, I used to identify as one way, I identify differently now. I believe God changed my life. Whether you agree with that or not, it is still her testimony, and she has a right to say that. You don't have to engage with her content. You don't have to be influenced by her content by not engaging with her content. Yes, you may feel a kind of way, and that stuff may be toxic, or whatever. Whether you agree with that or not, it is still her testimony. It is still her lived experience. It is still her story. You don't have to celebrate it. You don't have to adopt it. But if we believe people own their own identities and experiences, then that principle should apply even when someone's story makes us uncomfortable. Otherwise, we're saying, you can tell your story, but only if it supports the approved conclusion. You can say that you used to be gay, and now you're married and have children, but you must also say that you're still gay and that you only married him because that's what you believe God told you to do. But God didn't tell you to do that because you don't really hear from God. And that's not freedom. That's narrative control. Section 7. Accountability versus public shaming. Some people argue that messages like hers can be harmful. That conversation is worth having. That conversation is worth having. We can talk about that. We can talk about the harm. All of us who are deconstructing Christianity and white Christianity versus black Christianity and ancestral Christianity and African Christianity, we can talk about that. There is a difference between accountability and obsession. And I believe that some of these people are obsessed that what she says affects them so much that they have to pour out this hate that they feel like she gives onto her, back onto her. They want to put everything they felt that maybe they dealt with in their childhood or when they were in church, or how their families don't accept them because they're gay or queer, or, you know, whatever it could be. They're a lesbian, they're bi, whatever it could be, or they're non-conforming. Everybody believes that you're the one who did it because the message you share is the same message that they had back home. And so instead of going and talking to those people that I have in my proximity, the people that are in my community, I'm going to pour all this hate on you publicly online to the 57,000 threads. There's a difference between criticism and public humiliation. Some of what I've seen online feels less like accountability and more like punishment. As if the goal isn't understanding, as if the goal isn't helping anyone, as if the goal is making an example out of her. And that's what I really believe they're trying to do. They're using her as an example. They're using her as a tool to show people that when you say these things, whether you're experienced or not, and we don't like them, we are going to drag your entire family through the mud. We're going to drag your entire name through the mud. We're going to discredit everything you've ever said because we don't agree with it. Instead of just not engaging with that content and telling people around you not to engage with that content also. Wouldn't that be the easier step? But no, mob mentality and whatever happens online is the real world, and we hate her, therefore we're going to pour hate on her, which to me sounds like craziness. It sounds like insanity. Section 8. Why are we so angry at the wrong people? One thing I've noticed is how much energy gets directed towards people like Jackie Hill Perry, a woman talking about her faith, a woman talking about her family, a woman sharing her testimony. Meanwhile, there are countless larger systems, institutions, influencers, and people with actual power affecting millions of lives. I'm not saying that her influence is small. She has over 1 million followers on Instagram. That is a big influence. I agree. But I do believe that most of the people who are subscribed to her or follow her or listen to her messages want to because they feel like they are getting some sort of value. So the people who do not watch her messages because they feel like they're heresy or they feel like they're wrong or toxic, why? Social media can become obsessed with targeting one individual, not because criticism is wrong, but because the scale of the outrage often feels disproportionate to the influence of the person being targeted. Section 9. The internet's favorite sport, public shaming. Social media rewards outrage. The harsher response gets attention. The most extreme take gets engagement. The algorithm doesn't reward understanding. It rewards conflict. It rewards attitudes and problems and mess. People become symbols. People become villains. People become targets. And eventually we forget there is a real human behind the other side of that screen. Someone with feelings, someone with a family, someone trying to navigate the best life they know how. Section 10. My thoughts on persecution. I want to be careful with this word because when people hear persecution, they often think about imprisonment, violence, government oppression, historical atrocities. That is not what I'm comparing this situation to. Those things are not the same. But I do think there is a modern form of social punishment, a pressure campaign, a public shaming system, or culture that says stay quiet, keep those beliefs to yourself, say the approved thing or face consequences, be canceled. That's not the same as historical persecution, but is still a form of social pressure designed to enforce conformity. Section 11. Why this matters beyond Jackie Hill Perry. This isn't really about Jackie Hill Perry. It's about all of us. Because today's target is someone you disagree with. Tomorrow it might be someone you agree with. And then in the future it could be you. Society decides disagreement deserves humiliation. Nobody is safe from becoming the next example. The standard always expands. The target always changes. Conclusion. At the end of the day, I don't think the question is whether you agree with Jackie Hill Perry. The question is whether people still have a right to tell the truth about their own lives as they understand it. Can people share testimony others disagree with? Can people change? Can people describe their experiences without being publicly destroyed? Can people not be dragged for having opinions that you disagree with? Can we disagree without dehumanizing one another? Because if acceptance only applies to people who think exactly like we do, then it isn't acceptance. It's conformity. It's homogeny. And if freedom only applies to approved viewpoints, then it isn't freedom, it's control. What do you think? Where is the line between accountability and bullying? Can someone share a testimony that others strongly disagree with? Or should we respond when someone's belief conflicts with our own?